I'm a 30-year software veteran who now works with software founders all over the world. Uh, I do a little bit of therapy, but it's also about growing their business and determine what they want out of life and digging in. So I run CEO peer groups of B2B SaaS companies, early stage, under 10 million. I've got 40 founders in those groups. I do one-on-one advisory there. I have a podcast. I've interviewed 100 plus SaaS founders who've created valuable software companies without big funding. I played the VC funding game, and now I'm focused on helping the ones build without big funding, which is the hidden majority. And the myth of modern software is you need funding to do it. So, and many of the ones on the podcast have exited and others are building. So I'm in the middle of that conversation, and I'm happy to join today and contribute what I'm hearing.
Awesome.
I'm an exited founder myself. I helped start a company way back when in the 90s that grew fast, went public, and sold for 300 million in 2001. That was SalesLogix. And if you're old enough, remember ACT Software was part of the ACT business way back in the 90s. So
you told me you had 1.5 exits, Greg.
Well, yeah, I actually had a small exit from ACT way back in the early 90s, and and some other pieces along the way. But I've won the VC funded growth game, and I've lost that one. So
yeah, cool.
I've been doing this a long time, and the world has changed in the software game. I started in the early 90s when it was packaged software, and then was ACT Software, and we grew to be one of the top 20 products, and was mostly bootstrapped, a little funding, but the whole funding game hadn't really arrived at scale till the late 90s, and helped start another company with the founder of ACT. We built SalesLogix. So I've done CRM 3 times in my career. I built 2 companies to 100 million. One that I helped co-found, SalesLogix. We bought ACT back from Symantec after selling it. So I was doing that journey for a long time. And back then, you in software, you grew fast and you surfed the wave of whatever platform you were on, Windows 95 or the web or whatever. And funding was part of the deal, and you could go public for 100 million. So there was a certain era, and I don't have any regrets about the era. When we were building SalesLogix, 0 to 500 employees and 100 million in 5 years and public, it was a dead race. So I didn't have anything else in my life other than work and family. So really for 15 years doing that. So after all of that and selling the company in 2004 to Sage, I took some time off, but then I got back on the wagon. I was pretty young and did it again. That's what you did. You surf the wave, you do these things, and you keep going. Builders, and I'm a builder. I'm a grower of new categories and go off into the new frontier and build something and grow it up and scale it and all that kind of thing. So I did it with Infusionsoft in Phoenix. I was in Phoenix for 25 years building companies, and we grew that to 100 million in revenues with some venture funding, a lot of venture funding. And since then, I left in 2015. So the other side of the story is I've spent time with 5,000 software founders since then. I'm kind of a hyperactive helper and community builder and all of that. And I've seen the software game change, not only the SaaS recurring revenue business model and software that's been, the big wave of the last 15 years in software, but in the last 10 years, the cost of building software has gone down 10 times compared to where it was.
Wow.
The cost of going market has gone down significantly compared, if you know what you're doing. VC funds have gotten 2 or 3 times bigger, including PE funds out there. And so they have to write big checks. So at the same time, it was easier to create a sustainable, healthy, growing software business without VC funding. VC funding went stratospheric, hit its high in the COVID era. So these days, there's a lot of possibilities for founders to create steady, healthy, efficient, high leverage software businesses without throwing funding and risk and creating a race. It creates more optionality. You could run it for 20 years. You could sell it to PE. You could raise VC funding later if it's a good bet. So founders are kind of in control of this world, and there's a whole bunch of ways to do it between simple bootstrap, keep it small, and VC funding, go shoot the moon. There's all kinds of ways to do that. So that's the major learning I've had over the last 5 years, and I'm out there kind of preaching that, working with founders who are doing that. There's all kinds of ways to do it. And it's actually, you can kind of have a life along the way.
Mm-hmm.
when you're
What?
not going straight up as fast as possible. And that's the bet you make when you raise big VC funding. But there's all kinds of ways to do it, from grow fast or grow slow or profitable or not profitable or sell early or sell late or whatever. So founders have more options these days.
So, Greg, could you say more about that? Because a lot of the people that I work with and I talk to, um, I was just on a conversation with a client before this who the last thing he feels is like he is in control. He feels like
Of, of
everybody else is holding all. He's in the midst of potentially closing on the sale of his company. There's all this last minute, well, what about this and what about this? And there's
yeah.
multiple people involved, and um, he feels like he's completely lost control.
And what kind of company is it? And do they have outside investors or?
They do have outside investors, which
Okay, there
is
you go.
yeah. So it's definitely brick and mortar. It's not a SaaS company.
Okay, right.
But yeah, that for that, I think, and I can't remember it, I saw a post that made me think of you, Greg, in that like how important knowing your value is and knowing the value of what you've built and then sticking to it. Because there's going to be a lot of people along the way that are going to try to convince you,
Yeah,
this is your last chance and this is as good as it's going to
yeah,
get. You better get out now. And it's all this kind of fear and manipulation stuff.
right. Well, um, outside investors and VC funding in software isn't wrong, and it's not morally bad.
Ah,
It's just overprescribed by
mhm.
funders who are selling you their drugs. And it's misunderstood by most founders who think that's what you do. I get funding because I need money and all of
Right.
this, not knowing the implications of taking an opioid drug and inviting all the people into your house to, tell you what to do. Uh, and private equity buyers who buy partial or all of your company are they're less about funding, but they put on debt and they take control. So there's another form of that.
Right. And then
So,
they're thinking 5-year, 3-year, 5-year
right.
cycle, churn, churn, churn. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's their business model.
Right.
So that's okay. That's if you sell to them, that's what you do. And if you
Yeah.
raise VC funding, that's what you do. So there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there who run valuable businesses, have outside investors, and some are aligned and say, we agreed we wanted to build this kind of company. We wanted to build this kind of company. We did it. We're succeeding. We kind of felt that way with SalesLogix. And a lot of times there isn't alignment. VCs wanted this, and we grew it to this, and I want that. And there's differences there. So I would say it's not bad or wrong, but the more people you invite into your business, you have to serve customers and your employees. Now you have to serve investors, and sometimes they turn on to be your primary customer, the more money you raise. And when you sell a company, you're giving up control, you're selling your baby, and you're doing that thing. So that's very normal. It's very stressful to sell a company. I'm sure Mike went through it that way, emotionally, and just all the logistics and negotiation of it. And anybody in the software business who's built a software company is, Townsend said, to 1 million or 2 million ARR, even less these days. It's quite remarkable. Everybody who's got a 2 million ARR, a recurring revenue software business in SaaS these days, and there's tens of thousands of these, is getting offers every single day for, I want to put money in your company, or I want to buy your company on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's why they
Yeah.
go off of LinkedIn every single day. So you're in value there where you could make millions and so forth. So how do you resist that? How do you resist taking money? How do you resist taking offers? That's one of the questions we deal with at Practical Founders. So it's stressful. Building is hard either way. Bootstrapping is hard. Mike and, Townsend, building is hard. It's just choose your heart and choose your method. And that's a little bit like the modern, I use the opioid crisis. Like, I got pain, and then you get these addictive drugs that change your life and take you out of control. That's like VC funding for 90% of they're literally.
Wow.
It's a little bit like the myth, these industrial complexes, the university industrial complex, the funding industrial complex. Yeah, some people could take $1 million of student debt when they're 18 and go to the best school and eventually pay it back. It's possible. It's just not likely. That's actually the VC funding game right now, is we're getting all these founders on all or nothing bet, drugs, loading them up. And, I played that game. It can work, but it usually doesn't. And it's generally misunderstood. So there's a lot better way to create a software company for about 80% of software founders these days to have more control, because you can.
Yeah.
So
What it's really opened up, and what I'm, helping founders explore. The first rule of the game is know what game you're playing. So what should I do today about funding and hiring and pricing and branding? And any question depends on, well, where are you headed? That's why I moved up to the therapy about which swim lane do you think makes most sense for you? And then you can decide what you do on that. But one of the swim lanes that's actually, I would call it an exit or a partial exit, is to take profits out of the company as an exit. And continue running it for fun, because that's what we do. We builders build, and then we sell it, and we go back and build again and climb another mountain. 98% of all the founders I talk to do that. But one of the possibilities is to take money out and run it healthfully for yourself, and with the challenge, because sometimes the thing you just built is the most fun that you've ever had. So it's one of the possibilities in software that didn't exist 20 years ago, is you could run a steady, healthy, growing business with no intent to sell it anytime soon, even though you could sell it for 50 million, 100 million or more. And so it's just one of the ways to do it. It's not obvious from the outside, but something substantial has happened in the SaaS business. There is a corner of it, all this billion-dollar AI stuff, which LLM ChatGPT is going to take over. Okay, that will always be that race to climb the mountain. And even the platform space of horizontal CRMs and the stuff we use. And you probably met Doug Burgum back in the day at Fargo, Great Plains, and so forth. He did it practically, but there was you wanted to be one of the top three, right, in the category eventually. But these days, 50% of software companies in North America are vertically focused, commercial real estate or something like that. And you can get a software business to 1, 3, 5 million in recurring revenue. 5 million in recurring revenue is a multiple, even conservatively, of 5x for a not crappy company. So 25 million, that's life-changing wealth these days, just to 5 million. So if you grow your company to 5 or 10 million, that's life-changing wealth, founder scale wealth for founders these days. And markets, especially vertical markets, don't respond to hurry up and overfund it like VC, and hurry up and raise prices and take money out and screw the customer like PE. They know what's going on. So it used to be whoever raised money, had the most engineers, the most salespeople, and the biggest booth at the trade show won the category game. I played that game and won. And but now I talk to founders every day, several this week, who say, I've got a $3 million ARR business that I bootstrapped, and my two competitors in my space, and these are not like big platform spaces and big horizontal spaces. They're let's say niche spaces that could be $50 million. The two competitors raised 50 million and 75 million, and they are $5 and $6 million in revenue. So you're getting there faster. So, but what means they're screwed. To raise $75 million, you got to sell it for basically $1 billion to pay back the investors. So they're not going to be $1 billion companies. So they're screwed. Meanwhile, it's chugging along, and the VC funded guys come and go, and PE come and go, and they chug along. Pace, you don't have it. I think it's a myth that for most markets that you have to go faster, you're going to die. That's the old way. It worked. That was the old way. That's the old method. These days, it is about customer love and special leverage inside your product and your business model, special leverage inside your culture, your team, which takes time. And some markets don't respond quickly. If you're selling to a certain kind of commercial real estate agent, they're not taking the latest AI technology in 5 minutes. They're going to move over time and maybe take pieces of it. And whoever tries to bet on it's going to all change in 2 years is going to lose in that space, for example. So hey, I think it's a superpower that you could run your own pace.
Yeah.
and
Oh,
yet find the
so good.
leverage inside your business, the specialness that grows it. So it's less about money giving you leverage, funding giving you leverage. It's more about the specialness of your product and your focus and your that kind of thing. So
How refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
Michael, I think
Yes.
that goes right back to what you were saying about, being a purpose-driven business and being, having it mean something to you and that people get that. I think Greg is saying, yeah, absolutely. And maybe you're not going to be a unicorn, but you're going to have a business that is solid and that you enjoy running the business, you enjoy working with your employees, you enjoy serving your customers. And I mean, to me, that's what it's about, not the
So
potential
let's just talk
payoff.
about unicorns. Okay, there's a place for them. They employ a lot
Yeah.
of people. Oh, Google, Facebook, all that stuff, a lot of
We
money.
get all the headlines.
That stuff. Okay. 1% of all VC funded tech companies ever touch unicorn, let alone cash out at that. Okay. So let's stop talking about this like we're playing
everybody's getting
football
it.
and you have
Like-
to be Tom Brady.
Or like,
Yeah.
like it's the goal, right? As opposed
Yeah.
to
Still. So
run a business you love.
So that's the biggest myth, is that everybody gets funding and it has to be a billion and it's all that way. The overwhelming, there are 20 times to 50 times more exits for tech founders in my little software space, which isn't everything, that are 25 to 75 million than any $1 billion exits that are almost impossible. There's no IPOs right now. There's no strategic exits. And so all the fun is down here, but nobody's talking about it. So that's my little,
Love
Well,
it.
and what a lot of people don't talk about too, Greg, is a lot of those $1 billion companies, the founder ends up with less than 25, 50, $75 million, way less.
Yeah, this is a secret here.
Yeah.
I mean, you could build a healthy small business and get it to 5 million without any outside funding at your own pace and your own culture and your own way for the market you love and do the specialness and sell it for $50 million.
Yeah.
A friend of mine on the podcast 2 weeks ago did it in 5 years.
Wow.
Like, okay, this is a special time in the world.